Friends, a quick word before we get the show started. I was really excited for this episode of the Manifesto, and then a few things happened. First, Phil Robertson decided to opine on atheist morality by making up a scenario in which an atheist watches his wife and daughters brutally murdered, then having his own penis cut off, and Robertson's imaginary assailants gleefully yell, "Wouldn't it be something if there was something wrong with this? But you're the one who says there's no God. You're the one who says there's no right or wrong," which is awesome. And on the LGBT side of things, Blake Brockington, an 18-year-old trans activist who became the first trans homecoming king at his high school, and a trans woman named Tegan, who was actually local to me here in Cincinnati, both took their own lives. This show is no stranger, even 5 episodes in, to having hard conversations about issues like suicide, or calling out the absolute stupidity of the religious right. This episode is called the Good News Edition because I so desperately want people to understand that there are amazing things happening in both of these communities. There are great people working tirelessly to make the world a better place for both secular folks and LGBT folks alike. The sad fact is that we're never going to run out of bad news to share about either subject. There will never be a perfectly appropriate time to put out an all good news edition of this show. That's sort of the burden we've decided to take on here. We've spent lots of time on the show telling those stories, and we will continue to tell those stories. But here on this episode, I want any of you listening to set those burdens aside for a minute and enjoy hearing about some of the great things that are happening in both the LGBT and secular communities. Welcome to the Atheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I'm your host, Callie Wright, and I am joined as always by my co-host, Jonathan Moore, and Daniel Wolfsong.
Hey, everyone.
This is the Good News edition of the Manifesto. Let's face it, sometimes being a member of the atheist and or LGBT community can be pretty grim. Last episode, we broke down some pretty emotional and scary topics. So for this episode, I wanted to lighten things up a bit and talk about some really good things going on both in our community and in broader society for us as LGBT non-believers. We're going to start out with some Gaytheist news, and we're just going to overwhelm you with highlighting some great things going on. And after that, we have an interview with Shawn Jeffers, who's going to tell us all about Camp Quest and the awesome things they do to promote science and skepticism for kids all over the country. So Daniel, let's jump right in. Tell me what's awesome.
Okay, so religious freedom has become a pretty popular buzz phrase lately, for the wrong reasons in this case, with all these homophobic Christian business owners coming out and saying they want the legal right to refuse service to LGBT folks because it violates their religious beliefs or something. So, in this case, the governor of Indiana, Mike Pence, is considering signing one of these religious freedom bills into law as we speak. And the organizers of Gen Con, one of the largest, if not the largest, gaming conventions in the U.S., have said, you sign that bill into law, and we'll take Gen Con out of Indiana. Now, this is huge for a few reasons. First of all, Gen Con pumps more than $50 million into Indianapolis every year. So Indiana government is realizing that there's going to be a huge economic consequence to this bill being signed into law. And I think it's pretty damn cool that we're starting to see people rising up and saying, you know what, even though we aren't part of the LGBT community, we're not okay with LGBT folks being treated as second-class citizens. And we're showing society that there are social and economic consequences to bigotry and hate. And if these religious folks are this determined to sanction their bigotry through legislation, they're going to have to face the consequences that come along with that.
Man, this is so cool. Like, as a nerd and someone who has spent some time at conventions, you know, the nerd community is... I think there's probably some intersection with the LGBT community and the nerd community because,
oh yeah,
you know,
big time.
You know, right? Because, well, and I mean, I think all three of us are pretty big nerds, right?
Yeah. I'm the one of the moderators of a bear geek community on Facebook. So yeah, there's thousands and thousands.
So, you know, I mean, there's no shortage of allies, I think, in the nerd community, and I mean, there's plenty of actual LGBT folks there too. You know, for an organization this big to be so definitive, like, yeah, if you do this, we're done.
Right.
Like, there was no like political inoffensive language like, oh, we really hope you'll reconsider, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you do this, we're done.
Right.
It's so rare for organizations that big to make such a definitive statement in support of LGBT people. It's freaking awesome. I love it so much.
Yeah, and considering Gen Con's been around for a really long time, over 10 years, I know for sure. And for them just to say, hey, we'll take it elsewhere, that's huge. And, it just goes to show you that, and this is something I've been saying for a while, a lot of the people who are for these laws being passed seem to think that only gay people or LGBT folks are going to care about them, but they're completely writing off the whole segment of society that is just not okay with bigotry in any form. And, whether it's allies or just people who won't stand for discrimination like that, who are also going to say, look, we're not okay with that. Just we don't have to be, I don't have to be gay to know that a business who discriminates against gay people is not a business that's gonna get any money from me. So. And
you know what? I mean, I think gamers have gotten a bad rap. The whole Gamergate thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They've gotten a lot of bad rap about being bigoted, but that's just some gamers. That's not all the gamers. A lot of them are, progressive. They care. They are friends.
Sure.
Just because games aren't perfect. I realize there's some issues there with. The portrayal of women in games, but there are a lot of games out there that aren't that way, so...
Right, and, the organizers of Gen Con, they're setting a really, really awesome example doing this.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see, because, obviously, one thing like this hopefully will start an avalanche, and, I can't wait to see... because, the governor said he's going to sign this bill into law, so I feel like it's probably just a matter of time at this point.
Right.
And this is the good news edition, so I'm not going to say anything more than that. But I'm really excited to see the fallout from this and what it's actually going to cost Indiana. And,
$50 million is what it's going to cost Indiana.
Well, right. And, just to see, hopefully there will be this huge public backpedaling. Assuming this law would survive a Supreme Court challenge, which to be honest, I don't think it would.
Right.
To me, it's amazing how pragmatic people get when their bottom lines are.
Right.
It's true. It's true.
And I'll take it any way I can get it. I guess that's kind of a sad commentary. Like, people should want equality for the sake of equality. But apparently, like Walmart apparently has a really strong non-discrimination policy, but in general, the management is not super LGBT friendly, but it's just kind of because they see the writing on the wall. And, so they're like, well, this is coming. We might as well have a uniform policy that works everywhere. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. Like I said, I'll take it any way I can get it. I guess I would rather people's, hearts actually be changed, but,
it's happening.
in the meantime, I'm okay with sort of pushing people who are unwilling in that direction.
Yeah, me too. I would love for everyone to say, hey, we should do this because it's a good thing to do. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And in the meantime, I think it's pretty cool that we're just beginning to see that there are actual physical, tangible consequences to bigotry and hatred, and I think that's awesome. I'm not happy about Indianapolis losing out on $50 million if this goes through. The city's going to suffer, but you know what? Maybe that's going to be an impetus for people to stand up and say, hey, maybe we should rethink this, even when they didn't care before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of hotel owners, restaurant owners, they're going to be saying, hey, what are you doing? This is our livelihood that you're messing with here. And, we will take anybody's money if they're gay.
Yeah. And bigotry is not just some ideological thing that there are actual social and economic consequences to it. So.
Well, right. The few cons that I've gone to, like, I remember just here in Cincinnati, I was at Cincy Comic Con, and, I would go outside to reload, literature for the nonprofit that I was working for, or I would go outside to, like, get something to drink or to, like, grab lunch or something. And, there was a Chipotle, there was a Panera, and they were packed all day long. Mm-hmm. So, like, it has so many more consequences, I think, than people realize. And I really, really hope that if this happens, they'll really put the pressure on and be like, no, we need this. We need this business because these people matter.
Yeah, and I hope that there's some LGBT owned or very friendly businesses. They're going to say, hey, these are our customers that you're messing with, and we care about our customers, so.
Right. So Jonathan, tell me what you got.
So, we all know that portrayals of gay people in the media are almost always problematic in some way. There's a stereotypical flamboyant gay friend, the drag queen, etc., etc., etc. So often we see LGBT people on TV and in the movies that are not reflective of who we actually are. So I was really excited to hear about this. The Fosters, a show on ABC Family, which I'd actually never heard of before, featured the youngest gay kiss ever on TV. We all remember being that young and being all weird and awkward. And if you see the scene, it depicts a very normal situation between two teenagers trying to figure themselves and their relationship out. It looks very real to me. Not sexed up, not overly dramatic, just a boy who's in love and kisses the boy he loves. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit worried because I had a friend of mine send me this, and I was kind of worried because taking the gay aspect out of it, I'm not a super big fan of, young kids being portrayed sexually on TV, regardless of their gender or the sexual orientation aspect. So I was like, are we going to be like seeing 13-year-olds make out on TV and because I'm not for that.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Yeah, but it's very sweet. It's a very sweet.
Right, exactly, because I remember my first kiss, and it was definitely not this romantic movie moment. It was, hey, I really like you, and I think I want to kiss you. Would that be okay?
Oh man, when I was in seventh grade, I hadn't figured anything out, so these kids are way ahead of where I was.
Right. So I think it's so awesome because I think a lot of people don't understand how important it is to see people who look like them and people who are like them in the media in a realistic way.
Exactly.
If you grow up seeing nothing of yourself in culture, on TV, in toys, in movies, you start to really internalize the idea that there's something wrong with that. And I think it's so cool that a show can do this kind of thing. And actually, you said you'd never heard of it before.
Yeah,
I hadn't actually either, because I'm not a huge TV watcher, especially not like ABC Family kind of stuff. But the focus of the show is actually a family that's led by a lesbian biracial couple.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah.
So it's
I just saw the clip. I didn't know the context of the show. So
right. So I'm just like, wow, there's a show like that actually people are going to give a show like that airtime. It was amazing to me.
Especially on a network like ABC Family, which started out as the Christian Broadcasting Network, mind you.
Yeah.
Yes, wow. It did. Mm-hmm.
I was not aware.
I was not aware of that either.
Yeah. It used to be CBN, and then it became like Fox Family. That's why it's Family, isn't it? Because it was the Family Channel for a while, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, stuff like this, there's sort of a knee-jerk reaction to it that a lot of folks have, which is, it's okay if you're gay, that's fine, but why do you have to shove it down our throats?
Well,
I think we've all heard that ad nauseum. And, the simple answer to that is, if you look what's actually on TV and in the media, it's pretty much all, heterosexual folks. And, it's very... This very traditional way of life that's being broadcast for the most part. Things like this actually just serve to sort of give us a voice in the media and make, sort of release some of the taboo that's associated with us, because, we're just people. We do the same things you do. And normalizing it. That's exactly what I was getting at, is just making it. I would love for this. I would love for all things gay and bi and trans to be so boringly normal that we don't even think twice about it. Until we get to that point, that's this is a step in the right direction.
Kind of reminds me of when I was a kid, like DJ Tanner from Full House, her first kiss with Kevin, after her birthday party, and it's just. little innocent puppy love, young kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. That's what we need to see. Not not like steamy, like the article talks about like Teen Wolf is steamy, same sex making out, and shirts off and abs out, and I've seen enough of that,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It doesn't have to be hypersexual, and it really, there's no need for that. It's just cool for young kids young gay kids to see other gay kids on TV, just being normal kids. It's like Callie was saying. It's important for people to see themselves being represented in the media and mainstream society.
And finally today, I wanted to share an amazing coming out story with everyone. A 13-year-old trans boy named Tom gave a super moving speech at his high school about, and basically just made it his public coming out. And I was totally floored by this kid. I wrote a letter for my coming out that I guess could have been a speech that, I posted on Facebook and, sent to family. And honestly, I think this kid nailed it better at 13 than I did at 28 when I came out. So, I'm just going to play this video real quick.
On December 28th, 2014, Leela Alcorn, a 17-year-old trans woman, committed suicide because her family didn't accept her. This made me want to act on a subject that has been bothering me for quite a long time. All of 6th grade, I struggled with my gender identity, and I am now embracing my truth. For a while, I dismissed the fact that I hated my body. I pretended to be content with what I was assigned until at a certain point I broke. I went through a series of horrible breakdowns, and I would stand under the water in the shower crying. I knew I wasn't happy, but it didn't seem fair to me that everyone else around me was. They didn't spend all their time thinking about how much they hated being categorized as a woman. I didn't share that same feeling. In fact, I felt the opposite. For some of you, this may come as a shock. And for others, well, you knew or you thought I was transgender. Well, here's your reassurance. I am no longer Mia. I never really was. And now I finally stand before you in my true and authentic gender identity. As Tom. I stand before you as a 13-year-old boy. I understand that this will be a difficult adjustment, but I hope and trust that you will treat me with respect and thoughtfulness. So for those of you who are having trouble, that is completely understandable. You have known me as a girl for over a year, and it is hard to understand that I never was that girl. I want to tell you, as I consider you all my friends, well, most of you. No, I'm just kidding. In my heart, I'm still the same person. Whether you like that person or not, it's me. So here I am, no longer Mia Sosnick, the 13-year-old girl that you thought you knew, but Tom. I imagine that some of you will have questions, and I'm open to answering them at any time they come to you. I trust that you are all mature enough to understand which questions may be inappropriate, disrespectful, or hurtful. Please feel free to ask me, because after all, I know the most about my transition. Please talk about this with your parents and your family, but I ask of you really not to talk about it with your friends. It's not gossip-worthy. If there's something you want to say, I'm happy to talk with you. And I really hope that you will support my decision to embark on a harder route in life as the boy I truly am. Any form of support is received with much gratitude, and I hope that everyone can really support me because you guys are like my second family. And if you support me, I will feel like the luckiest boy in the world. Thank you for letting me share my story. I want to just tie it back to what I said at the beginning. After reading Leela's suicide letter, I came to really appreciate the support I have in my family and my community that she never got. Thank you all for making me feel safe enough to openly be myself.
seriously, how amazing is that kid?
So awesome.
Like, it is amazing to me that this kid at 13 is like, I would have been absolutely mortified to even say the word transgender at 13 in front of the people I went to school with.
Yeah.
Jesus, I was a complete wreck at 13.
Yeah, I think most of us were, and that's why.
That's what I was just about to say.
I'm listening to him, and I'm like, man, this kid, he just really impressed me, and just seemed to be wise beyond his years. I'm like, man, if this is you at 13, I can't wait to see. And I do hope, maybe we'll never hear from him again, but I think he's going to do really amazing things for the transgender community.
Right, that's the thing. I hate to like foist activism on people, but I'm just thinking like, my God, this kid's going to be great for the movement.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe he will. It seems like, when he brought up Leela and if something as terrible as what happened to Leela can activate someone and bring them out of their own closet and make them sort of bring this to everyone's attention, I mean, it's the best that can happen out of a situation like that.
Well, and there was the applause at the end of the video.
Yeah.
Because that was like, wow, he's saying this in front of a crowd that's at least receptive.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you don't see in the video how many people are there versus how many people applauded. Like, maybe it was like 10 people out of 100 people or something. But I don't, 10 years ago, I don't think there was probably anywhere in the country where that could have happened.
I completely agree. Agree.
And I mean, there are still, I would say probably most places in the country that still can't happen. But I think it's a pretty great commentary on at least some of the pockets of progress that we've made that there's a kid that feels comfortable saying that stuff in front of his schoolmates. There's a trans clinic at Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, and I know some of the kids that go there have been forced into going to homeschool because of bullying from their school.
Yeah.
And, this kid basically is just like, in a really nice, intelligent, thoughtful way, was like, hey guys, if you're not cool with it, you can go to hell.
That's on you. That's your deal. I'm coming out and I'm happy about it. I think it's awesome.
He's going to go far, even if he's not an activist, he's going to, I think, do great things with his life, so.
He's going to do something awesome. Like, even if it's not LGBT activism, like, he's going to do something awesome.
Yeah, maybe, it could have nothing to do with the movement. To me, it's so cool to see kids, trans kids, gay kids coming out, and they're coming out at this young age, and they're showing people this is what a happy, well-adjusted trans kid looks like, or a happy, well-adjusted gay kid. This is what it looks like versus the depressed, suicidal, bullied kid that we hear about so often because society hasn't, completely come around yet. And it's like, wouldn't you rather have this, kids who can, I mean, if you watch the video, he's just got this twinkle in his eye and
I gotta say, he must have some really great parents. So
yeah, he did mention having a really great support network, and I'm sure he's got a great group of friends too who are rooting for him. So I mean, I want to see more of that. I want to see more kids who are able to come out and say, this is who I am, figuring it out early enough that they don't have to go through these, this long drawn out ordeal that a lot of us, have to go through in our respective journeys.
Right, and I think that the reason why I decided to bring this one up last is that I think this kind of nicely ties together the reason that I want to do a good news edition of this show every once in a while. Mm-hmm. I have absolutely no desire to erase, the heartache and the suffering that so many people in our community go through, but I also think it's important because somebody may be listening to the show who's in the closet and really scared about coming out and not sure what to do. And, I think it's important to let people know that it is possible to be happy and fulfilled. And that, I mean, I can say for me, at least, I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone but myself, but all the things that I've struggled with, being able to be myself and being part of this community, both the atheist community and the LGBT community, has far outstretched any struggles that I've personally had. And I so badly want people to know that you can be happy and you can be fulfilled, and that there really is a community here that is just falling over itself to make that happen for people.
Yeah, and a lot of folks might think this goes without saying. I don't think it goes without saying. It's about finding your people, whether it's finding a family of friends or a circle of people who support you and love you unconditionally. That's what life is about. It's about finding those people. We're here to be, a few of those people here for you, but it's important if you're in those situations, if you're in a situation where your family doesn't support you and maybe your friends don't support you, it's so important to find those people who will support you. And they're out there. It may not even be easy to find them, but it's so necessary to find them.
Yeah, I want to close this out just by saying, if you're listening and you are one of those people who, you're struggling with who you are and you're scared and you're not sure how to handle it or what to do, especially if you're listening in the United States, there's an amazing LGBT community nationally, and there are other people like you out there who are ready to embrace you and love you and support you. Sometimes they're not the easiest to find, especially if you live in a super conservative area. Look at meetup.com, find Facebook groups, Google the name of your city and trans support group or gay support group. Look for a local chapter of GLSEN, look for a local local HRC steering committee, a local trans support group. These people are out there, and we're really, really honestly ready to do the work of making sure that you're okay and making sure that you find a place and a family and a community that's going to lift you up so you can reach your full potential.
Yeah, and feel free. I mean, we make this invitation at the end of every show. Seriously, feel free to hit any one of us up. Callie's got lots of experience being a transgender person, and she's come a long way. Jonathan and I are gay guys who can talk to you if you're a gay person struggling with that. We're all pretty nice people and easy to talk to. So feel free to hit us up.
Yeah, we don't bite.
And it well, I don't know.
Hard.
And the other thing is, if obviously there are lots of different flavors of queer and trans, right? And if you're one of those people who, if you're a trans man or think you might be and want to talk to a trans man, I know people. If you're a queer woman, I'm a queer woman too. If you don't think that our experience is relevant, I guarantee we know people who are. So reach out and we will get you connected with people.
Absolutely.
I mean that in all seriousness. We don't put our contact information at the end of every show just to sound cool. Like, we really want to interact with people. So please do that. So we're going to have Shawn Jeffers, who's the National Board Chair for Camp Quest, up next. We're going to take a quick break. More of the Atheist Manifesto coming up.
I'm Chris the Seethin' Heathen.
And I'm Joe Kindick.
From the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast. And we are staunch allies of the LGBT community.
I'm Daniel Radcliffe, and I believe that reaching out for help is the bravest thing a person can do. If you are struggling and need support, call the Trevor Lifeline at 1-866-488-7386. It's free and confidential, and trained counsellors are there to listen 24/7 without judgment. To learn more about the Trevor Project's life-saving work for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning young people, go to thetrevorproject.org.
Shawn Jeffers is the National Board Chair for Camp Quest, which is a really awesome summer camp for secular kids 8 to 17. Shawn was good enough to take some time out of his super busy schedule, and I do mean super busy schedule because I've been trying to do this interview for a while and he's always on a plane somewhere. So he took some time to talk to us about Camp Quest and why it's awesome, and especially why it's a great place for LGBT kids and adults as volunteers to go. Shawn Jeffers, welcome to the Atheist Manifesto. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about you and what you do with Camp Quest.
Sure. So I've been involved with Camp Quest since 2003, and Camp Quest has been around since 1996. And with Camp Quest, Ohio, which is kind of my home camp. I have been the operations director for about the past 10 years. I started as a cabin counselor. And then I've also served on the board of Camp Quest, Ohio, and now on the board of the National Camp Quest organization. We're a network of 14 camps nationwide. And I serve as the board chair this year for Camp Quest Inc.'s national board.
That's awesome. So give me an overview of exactly what Camp Quest is.
Camp Quest is a secular summer camp. It's a summer camp for the children of atheist, agnostic, secular humanist, free-thinking parents, whatever terms maybe families use to describe themselves. We've even had religious families along the way choose to attend. But I think essentially it's a camp where, it's not just that religion isn't part of it. I think the bigger part of really what camp is all about is it's a camp where we focus on science, on philosophy, on critical thinking, and then, like all camp experiences, really allowing young people to just really be themselves in a safe and nurturing environment. And so I think for all of these reasons, it's been awesome, I think, to be part of it for this past 12, 13 years now.
So what made you want to get involved?
So I'm an Eagle Scout, and I got involved in Cub Scouts when I was 6 years old, and didn't really realize when I was 6 that I maybe was gay or would choose to be atheist later on in life, and neither of those are permissible in the Boy Scouts. So the scouting policies currently do not allow gay or atheist adults, and do not allow atheist youth either, due to conflicting due to their policies. So I was involved in scouting up until 2002. I worked at a Boy Scout summer camp here in Cincinnati, Camp Friedlander.
When I was a kid.
Okay. Yeah. So awesome. So I was, so that was the first year Camp Friedlander had a Boy Scout summer camp. So they hadn't had a local summer camp here in the Cincinnati area, and we'd always gone to other camps, but I was serving on staff. And when it was about the first week, actually, there was this group from Mount Washington, I remember, and they had this patch, and it was a rainbow. Like one rope was rainbow, and the other rope was purple and silver. And they were intertwined to form a square knot. And they handed me the patch and said, because we were talking, and so they gave me the patch because it was from inclusivescouting.org. It wasn't a sanctioned patch. But I put that patch on my uniform, and I think all throughout camp, so one of the things about Boy Scouts, if you're not familiar, is people could be like 3 football fields away and see a patch that they don't have, and they make a beeline for you, and they're like, "Wait, what is that patch? I gotta have it."
I remember that.
Yeah, right. And so they're so excited about getting this patch, and then so they're like, "Oh, I don't have that patch. What is it?" And I was like, "Oh, it's from inclusivescouting.org, and it stands for my support, to allow gays and atheists to be part of scouting." And then there would always be this, I'm not sure, I'm not sure about that. But usually they would find one more concerning than the other. And so it started to be this ranking of hierarchy, ranking of oppressions,
right.
In a way. Be like, well, I could see allowing gays, but the atheists, God is in the Scout Oath and Law, so I'm not sure about that. Or I could see allowing atheists, because you could just be respectful to religion, even if you're not religious, and still be able to follow that. But I don't know, the gays kind of make me nervous around these kids. And so you were hearing these messages over and over. And at that point, I had been aware that I didn't profess any religious beliefs, probably since about high school, so about 5 years earlier or so, but was less aware of, I think, beliefs around, I would say less aware around my beliefs, my awareness of my own sexual orientation, I think. And that was something that these conversations started to help me come to terms with. And so around week 3, I recognized that, I think that I was gay, and I think I had just been more in denial and oblivious to it. But I recognized that, and so I quit. So I decided to leave camp. I quit my job. I quit scouting because I just needed to be in a community that was going to be more supportive to allow me to explore this identity. And I really thought in a lot of ways that that was going to kind of be the end of camp. Probably since about 11, 12 years old, I've done at least 2 weeks of summer camp, if not more, a year, and going on into my adult life now. And so doing camp has always been something very much like, I think, part of my routine. And so that was a real concern for me. And the next summer, well, actually, I had found out about Camp Quest. We brought Edwin Kagan, who's one of the founders of camp, to Miami University for a debate around, it was a God debate. And so it was Edwin debating on the side of the Organization for Atheists and Agnostics that I was part of at Miami, and then a professor debating on the side of the Christians. And so it was, does God exist or not? But we had gone to dinner beforehand, and Edwin was talking about Camp Quest. And Edwin was always selling you on Camp Quest, always selling people on camp. Like, what are you doing this summer? You need to be at camp. What do you do? You need to be at camp. And so I applied for Camp Quest that next summer, the summer after I left scouting and came out, but was concerned about like how I would be treated, I think, going into camp because of my experience with the Boy Scouts, and just found that it was nothing could be further, I think, from reality. Is that, scouting had such biases, I think, that had made me really, really anxious. But I think going into Camp Quest, it was such an open, inviting environment, and really allowing adults and campers to just bring their full self into camp. And so I've never felt that I wasn't welcome at camp. And so that's really, I think, for me, like how I've stayed involved and why it's become such a big part of my life, is because I don't think it only, I think when I first got involved in camp, it was definitely around finding a place for myself. And now that I feel much more comfortable in who I am and my identities, it's really shifted to be able to create a community that allows our campers, our young people, to find themselves and feel more comfortable in who they want to be as they grow up into adults.
Wow, that's really freaking cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of, talk to me a little bit about, because I think Camp Quest is something that's probably pretty well known, within the atheist secular community. But my question was always, what about LGBT inclusiveness, especially trans kids, counselors, stuff like that. So tell me a little bit about how all that works.
Yeah, so we've really that's something we've been talking about as a national network. Is that we want to be a model camp, I think, in terms of LGBT inclusion, and because we recognize that these are biases oftentimes brought about because of religion and not brought about because of science. And so if we're going to see the values of Camp Quest become mainstream, then we have to live those out at camp and have them start, at home first, if you will. And so that's really something over the past couple years we have like taken some strides to like make our applications more open. So instead of just saying we have a male cabin and a female cabin, really looking at how do we have, letting campers choose where they want to go to cabin. We've talked about at Ohio getting actually to just a gender neutral cabin that campers can self-identify and select, and so just if there's desires, because we've had a couple, transgender non-conforming campers come over the years, and I think there's always some concern at first around, I'll hear from other people like, oh, do we need to tell parents? And I was like, we don't tell parents about any other campers coming to cabins. Like, why would we talk about this, right? Like, but it's just, and I understand sometimes where it's coming from is just, this is new, this is different. Should we give people an alert so there's not a concern? But I think oftentimes, parents trust that we have the best interest in their children, and they basically loan us their kids for a week. And so I think, we frame that this is how camp is going to be, and don't need to single out any one staff member, and, in letting people know. And so more broadly, look at that. Last year, we have a national leadership summit as well each year. So last year, there's a trans summer camp that's up in New England. And so we had the director kind of do a video training with us and talk through, with national leaders across the country, because some camps are ready. I would say Ohio, just because of my work with GLSEN and some other staff who are more aware, like Ohio would be much more ready to work with trans or LGBTQ kids. Other camps maybe don't have as much exposure or experience. And so I always say, when you're having these conversations, like, don't just discount yourself and, look at it as a deficit, like, oh, well, we're not ready, like, we can't do this. But more say, what are the things we need to do to put it in place? So we had this national conversation and have been continuing to explore that. And we have a leaders list, like, we share information back and forth. And so we have a new camp accounting software, and somebody posted last week, like, the camp accounting software doesn't allow me to pick, it's like set up to just pick one of two genders. Like, I can't work outside of it. And so we were actually brainstorming, like, well, you can just ask a follow-up question, or just make some comment around, like, camp will put, you where your child identifies, and not like, some of the language that's in these horrible bathroom bills about, like, oh, you're only allowed to use legal sex or something, but really finding ways to work, because it's unfortunate that the world is often treated, very much set up in a binary. So there's a boys' shower house, a girls' shower house, a boys' cabin area, a girls' cabin area at a lot of the host camps we rent out. But while we have some of those limitations, it doesn't mean like we can't think outside the box and think broader about inclusion as well.
That's so awesome to hear, because I have a good friend of mine, Kayla. She was a counselor at one of the camps in California last year, and I mean, she cannot say enough good things about the organization and the experience and everything. So that's really, really awesome to hear.
Awesome.
So what I would love to hear is just, I mean, do you have a story from camp that stands out to you as like, something that kind of ties the whole experience together and kind of like gives you an idea of like what it's all really about?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot I think come to mind. A couple, I think one in particular is what's been neat, now that I've been involved for, this year is going to be like, the 13th summer. I think what's really neat is, our campers are 8 to 17. So we have campers who are 8 years old who now, if they started, my first or second year when they were 8, they're now on staff and they're now starting to be peers.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I think, and that's what you start to see around that. And I think, and so some of these campers, if they were started at 8, obviously, like, they didn't wake up when they were 7 and say, I think I'm an atheist. Like, this is probably something that, like they were, that this was something, that they got more connections and messages at home, and the parents, like, kind of allowed them to explore. And that's one of the things, too, that's really neat is you see a lot of the staff tend to be more, individuals who maybe came to atheism out of religion, but a lot of the youth, were raised in environments that were much more open and encouraged, critical thinking and free thought. And so I think when you talk to kids about that, like, that a lot of adults, because of some of the things some of the religious messages that have been really hurtful, they've, I think some adults still carry that pain of religion with them. And I think with the young people, they don't often have that same pain. There's a lot more desire for openness and desire for knowledge. And so I think, so one of those individuals who was a camper, Sarah, who's now on staff, and, is on staff not only at Ohio, but also at Chesapeake. And at Chesapeake will be program director this year. And so it's great to see, people feeling that they get to step up and be in a leadership role in this camp that really became their community with that. The other thing that is phenomenal to watch. So there's this book by Christopher Phillips. It's called Socrates Cafe. So I'll make a plug for that if people are really thinking about having conversations. But Socrates Cafe, in essence, is just a way to talk about, ideas and concepts. So it'll be an afternoon opportunity where a group of campers and staff will go sit by the fire pit and just throw out a question. So the question might be like, what is love? And campers from 8 to 17 and staff will all kind of talk about this philosophy. And rarely do you see times where 8-year-olds and 17-year-olds are willing, at least 17-year-olds are willing to engage, right, with 8-year-olds and feel like that it's not either beneath them or it's boring them or something. But with Socrates Cafe, everyone's bringing such unique perspectives. And so even if you're younger, the way you maybe look at love, like, brings such a new, fresh perspective, or their thoughts on the matter. And so by having those opportunities, like, whether it's love or war or, conflict, or is altruism real, like any of these questions that you just kind of throw out and see, like, what takes place. And so that's really, for me, I think the essence of camp is that, it's not being told what to think. It's challenging young people to think. And so Socrates Cafe, more than any other programs, challenges people to think and just creates this open learning environment.
So where can people go to find out more?
So to register, if you're in the greater Cincinnati, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, or, region, you can go to ohio.campquest.org. We have 2 weeks. We're expanding to a second week. This is actually the 20th year of Camp Quest Ohio. And so we are expanding to 2 weeks because we've outgrown just 1 week. And so ohio.campquest.org has all that information. Or if you're around the country, and go to campquest.org, and all the camps and all their dates are all listed on our national organization's website, and there's a way to register right there from the site for any of the camps.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out to talk to us. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for what you do. This is an awesome thing, I think, for both the LGBT community and the atheist community. So that's really cool. I salute you for what you do.
All right. Well, thank you, Callie. Yeah.
Awesome.
And if anyone has questions, just please encourage them to reach out, ohio@campquest.org. This is how you can get a hold of me and can follow up and share more details or information.
Very cool. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Grow your library and your vocabulary without ever looking up from your precious little smartphone. Visit atheistaudiobooks.com and start listening in minutes.
Here's an excerpt from Disproving Christianity by David G. McAfee.
Each argument and contradiction presented will bring us closer to disproving the main pillars of Christianity, using nothing more than logical thinking, statistics, scientific and historical data, and Holy Scriptures. The debates between Christians and non-Christians have raged for thousands of years, and I expect the conflict to continue. But I do hope that these arguments will allow those Christians who may not have questioned biblical fallibility in the past to realize that these texts are man-made, and they represent the ideas of those fallible individuals who created and edited the compilation of texts now considered to be the Holy Bible. They contain errors, contradictions, and a stagnant moral code which, in many ways, no longer coincides with the morality of modern man. What I hope to gain from presenting these arguments and little-known biblical passages to the reader is a sense of understanding of Scripture which may not be presented in Bible study or in church, and for good reason. If read with an open mind, I truly believe that this book will open people's eyes to the wonders of free thought in a way that other works utilizing a more philosophical approach cannot.
Disproving Christianity and Other Secular Writings by David G. McAfee is now available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
Welcome back to the Atheist Manifesto. So at the end of every show, we invite people to reach out and to share their comments and share their thoughts with us. And someone did that after the last episode where we talked about these trans bathroom bills. And someone left a comment on our Facebook page. Her name's Melissa. She's a trans woman. And she said, I want to take a moment to thank you for sharing these stories and doing the podcast. It's a good touchstone to help me feel less alone and less weird for being a skeptical trans person, and has helped me process and put into context some of the terrible things in my life. Melissa, thank you.
Yes, that's awesome.
That's amazing. That's why we're here, and I could not be happier that something that we said touched you. So thank you for that. And anybody else who's in the same position, please feel free to reach out.
Yep.
Do that.
We love
please.
mail.
So today's Be a Better Ally is brought to you by me. I know you've heard from me before, and I promise that we're going to have people from outside the show included in this segment. We already have, and it's going to be a lot more of that in the future. But I've realized something super important that needs to be said. Those of you who follow the show on Facebook may have already seen this, but it bears saying again. I'm often asked by people what they can do to help, especially by people who invite me onto their shows or folks that I interview for this one. And first, I want to say that this is an awesome question to ask because it represents someone acknowledging that the best way to find those answers is to ask a member of the community. So that's awesome. And my response is usually something along the lines of just keeping the conversation going. I tell people, don't be afraid to speak out, speak loud, have the conversation often and in any circumstance. And I've recognized over the past few days that answer is sort of incomplete. This is two things really, but they're related to one another. So the first is that if you want to have an in-depth conversation about issues that affect the LGBT community, try to involve a person from the community in the conversation. Especially if that conversation is happening in a space with a public platform, like a podcast or a TV show or a discussion panel, a news segment, or anything like that. One of the best ways that you can be an ally to someone, not just LGBT folks, is to, if you have a position of privilege and influence, is to use that platform to advance the stories of those people by getting everyone's attention and then saying, "Hey, they have something to say." And the second but related thing is, don't forget about trans people when we talk about these issues. The atheist community generally is really, really awesome at calling out gay equality issues, and calling out anti-gay bigotry. And this is awesome. It needs to happen and it needs to keep happening. Don't stop doing that. Just please keep in mind that trans folks have a long road to go down as well. We're similarly affected by marriage equality because some of us are gay or bi or pansexual. In fact, because I can't get my birth certificate amended in Ohio and gay marriage isn't legal here, I'm actually not sure who it's legal for me to marry because my driver's license says F and my birth certificate says M. But we also face issues relating to violence, homelessness, poverty, unemployment, access to healthcare, and a really, really long list of other concerns. So I'm just asking that you don't forget about trans issues. I know that it may be an issue of simply not being familiar enough with the issues to be able to speak about them with authority, and that's understandable. But let me make this my invitation to anyone who's listening and wants to have these conversations to reach out to me. This is my passion. This is what I've decided to dedicate my life to, and I'm willing to have these conversations with anyone who's willing to listen. Even people who might not be so friendly to the issue, I'm not above a debate or going into hostile territory. So if you know anybody, if you're one of those people, please get a hold of me.
I did not know that you can't get your birth certificate amended in Ohio.
Yeah, there are, I don't know the number of states off the top of my head, but Ohio is definitely not the only one.
Yeah, wow. This is one of those things that a lot of people don't even think about, or they're not even aware of that that's an issue people deal with. And the trans movement, in a lot of ways, is really just beginning in earnest. And so, yeah, it's important to keep the trans movement in these discussions.
Yeah, I actually, because I'm lazy, I haven't actually sent my name change letter to the to whatever the depository is that holds birth certificates. But I have a friend who did, and she told me basically they take a copy of your name change letter and staple it to your birth certificate. So if you request a copy of your birth certificate, you get a copy of your original birth certificate with that paper stapled to it.
Okay,
which is just ridiculous to me. I don't. So
I don't understand why it's such a big deal. I really don't.
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure that in itself is something that people are so opposed to. I think it's probably something that so few people ask for that people just don't care. Politicians haven't, been faced with the issue of, oh, hey, I want to support the trans community, so I'm going to change the law to let people amend their birth certificates. Yeah. My guess is something that if it's been brought up by anyone, a politician will be like, oh, yeah, we should do that. Let me get to that after I get to the 300 other things on my list. It's just not a priority for them, which sucks.
Well, do they do the same thing? so that you can't change your gender, but you can change your name on your birth certificate, or you can't change either on your birth certificate?
Oh, no, you can't get your birth certificate amended at all.
It might have something to do with like identity, like they're afraid people are going to use it to change their name to like hide, or you know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, yeah, but when I had my name legally changed, at the state level.
Yeah.
And I had to attest under penalty of perjury that I wasn't trying to defraud anyone and that I wasn't running from criminal charges.
Right.
And literally, I just had to, hold my right hand up and swear to that. And it was good enough for, to change my name on my driver's license.
Strange.
So
I don't right.
So
it's just new. It's new territory, and a lot of these laws are just defaults. What we definitely
1860 or something.
Yeah, we need people who are able to, who care about the trans cause, who can get these laws changed. And I think most trans folks would be just fine with, if the law came about that they can change their name on their birth certificate as long as they can attest that they're a trans person. I don't see any issues with that.
Yeah, I'm totally cool with like, hey, I'll raise my right hand and swear that I'm not trying to defraud anyone by changing my name. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's a huge burden to have to undertake. Like, I'm good with that.
Yeah,
right.
And that's gonna do it for another episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto. I want to take a minute here real quick to call out some of the awesome folks who have been good enough to give me some airtime to talk about these issues. David, Lydia, Donovan, Brandy, John, and the whole crew at Dogma Debate. Adam Reeks from The Herd Mentality. Jake Farr Wharton from the Imaginary Friends Show. Deborah from Atheists on Air Beyond the Trailer Park and My Secular Savior. And Matt, Jacob, and Eric from Miami Valley Skeptics. And just recently, Zach Law of Zacrilege Cast. So, having gotten to know folks like you has made me so proud to be a member of the secular community and very, very hopeful of the future, not just for secularism, but for the LGBT community as well. You guys are all my heroes, and I mean that with all sincerity. I want to thank Shawn Jeffers again for taking the time to be on the show, and I, of course, want to thank my lovely co-hosts, Jonathan and Daniel.
Aww.
My pleasure.
Please do reach out and connect with us online, and on Twitter, I'm at GaytheistCali.
I, Daniel, am on Twitter at Daniel Wolfsong.
And I'm on Twitter at Nerdcub, NERDKUB.
And you can follow the show at The Gaytheists. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto and email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. And I also want to note real quick before I close out the show that we have made the decision to go weekly, and we will now be hitting your ear holes every Friday morning.
Oh, yeah.
So,
oh, my God.
Stoked on that. So before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one understands and no one cares, you need to know there's a community out there who loves you and knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. Please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network.